Check, check, 1, 2. Hope you like a little country, some rock and roll and blues, 'cause we sure love playing for good people like you. Let me know if you can hear me. Check, check, 1, 2.
Welcome to Music Local and Sustainable, the radio show that features discussions with and the music of local musicians. I am your host, Dave Lake. Tonight, we are with local jazz guitarist Bill Smith here in the studio. You can see him regularly at Rancho Alegre on weekends with the Jody Espina Trio. Welcome, Bill Smith.
Thank you, Dave. I'm so glad to be here.
What is being a professional musician like in Savannah?
It's actually pretty good. There are not a lot of venues for what I do, which is mostly jazz, but there's enough to keep me busy. I'm working at Rancho Alegre regularly. That's been a very nice ride so far. We've been down there for 5.5 years. There's 4 of us involved in that. It's myself and Jody Espina on sax, Mitch Hennis on bass on Friday nights, and our regular Saturday night bass player is Maggie Evans. And it's been a great ride. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot of new tunes, met a lot of great people, and it's just been really super.
What sort of other types of musical performances do you do, say, during an average month?
I work a lot of times for Kristen King. She's booked me for weddings and that kind of thing. She has a company called New Arts Ensemble here in town, and get weddings and private parties, that kind of thing, from her business. And also have a regular house gig at a place called the Firefly. It's a local restaurant on Troop Square, and we play on Thursday nights for a couple hours. It's myself, Ellen Gross on vocals, and Dave Smith is a vocalist and guitarist, and we cover it all. We do anything from Beatles, Crosby, Stills, Nash, Steely Dan, and a lot of standards too. We do a lot of jazz standards, and that's been a real joy also. A couple of other projects and groups I play with. There's a group called the Coastal Celtic Consortium, and this is composed of myself, Judy Williams, Bob Williams, and Jamie Keena, and we do primarily Celtic music. We play for a lot of the Scottish events around town, the Scottish games. We recently played for the Scottish Society. That was a great event, and I play mostly mandolin with this group and a little bit of Irish whistle, and Jamie Keena plays banjo and Irish whistle, and Judy's our guitarist, and Bob Williams is a hammered dulcimer player. He plays guitar and harp and hammered dulcimer with this group. And we don't play a lot, but we play enough to keep it interesting and keep my chops up, so that's always fun.
And that's with Scottish music primarily, Irish music?
Scottish and Irish, yeah. Anything Celtic. Another group I play with is a rock band out of Waycross, Georgia, called Rhythm Oil. And we've been together almost 20 years now. It's my brother and 3 other guys. We're just your ordinary cover band, but it's a very good cover band. We play a lot of weddings and private parties, and I have to travel to do that gig, but it's worth it. These guys are a lot of fun to play with.
It sounds like you've played with bands for many, many years, and you're actually involved with relatively new things, such as the Uncommon Collective is actually relatively new. Last couple of years, I guess?
Well, this is our second season. We did a couple of gigs last Christmas time, and we did 2 this year. It's kind of a project band, I guess. We don't rehearse regularly, but it was a lot of fun, though. It was a 6-piece group, and we had harp, mandolin, stand-up bass, me on guitar, and a couple of vocalists, and a lot of fun. We had a good packed crowd at the UU Church last Saturday night, and I think we were very well received. They've already booked us again for next year, so we'll be back there December 9th next year.
What type of music does the Uncommon Collective play?
A lot of pop stuff. We did a lot of old-time pop music and some blues type things, and we actually did, I think, 4 or 5 Christmas tunes too, Christmas standards. That's an ongoing project, but it's limited. I mean, we don't do it that often unless somebody calls us for a gig.
It sounds like you're doing a wide variety of different types of music: Celtic music, rock music, pop standards, jazz.
Oh, yeah.
How do you change your style, or do you have to change your style for each of those performances?
Oh, I have to change my style. I had to change what guitars I use, what equipment I use. But when you've been doing something for 51 years, you get used to it. You know what instrument to grab, and you just kind of flow with it, I guess.
Let's just take jazz as an example. When you're performing with Jody Espina, what guitars do you use?
Right now, I just bought a new Gibson ES-335. I've been using that a lot. That's a semi-hollow body guitar. Sometimes I use my Benedetto, which is a jazz guitar that was built right here in Savannah. Sometimes I use my Paul Reed Smith guitar, which most people would consider more of a rock guitar, but I can get a jazz sound out of it.
The last one is a solid body?
It is a solid body, yes.
Yeah. The Gibson you mentioned, how does that differ from the other two types of guitars? Because the other two, one's a classic jazz guitar, hollow body jazz guitar, arch top probably.
Yeah.
And then the rock guitar is a solid body. How does this
the
Gibson differ?
ES-335 is a semi-hollow body. It's a thin hollow body, as opposed to the Benedetto, which is a full-sized jazz guitar.
Now, the Gibson would look more like what one would consider a rock guitar then?
No, it looks more like a jazz guitar to me.
And why do you select one versus the other, say, when you're performing with Jody Espina?
No special reason. I'll be playing on something in the afternoon and say, I think I'll play this one tonight. Just got a good feel about it, and it's just about different every single weekend.
Mm-hmm. For instance, you also performed with Jody Espina at the Unitarian Universalist Church relatively recently.
Oh, yeah, we did a concert about a month ago. That was well received. Had a blast putting that together. Usually we're playing at Rancho Alegre. The noise level in there is pretty high. Not just the plates and dishes clanking around, but the people talk pretty loud. So it was kind of nice to actually be able to hear ourselves well for this concert. Put me on my toes a little bit. I had to think about what I'm doing a little bit more than usual. But we actually love our gig at Rancho. It's been a real pleasure. And we have a lot of sit-ins. We have a lot of people come in. They'll bring your horn, and you never know who's going to walk through the door. A lot of the local musicians. And Jody usually has a couple of celebrity musicians a couple of times a year, George Garzone and people like that. Actually pretty famous in their genre, and they'll sit in with us. They'll actually play the whole gig with us sometimes, both nights. And that's been a pleasure, too.
It's interesting because Jody Espina will often have very famous sax players in town because of his business.
Actually, yes, that's true. He has a mouthpiece making business here in town, and these people will come. They'll stay with him and tour the factory, and they'll come play with us at that night. And so it's been real nice. Jody's business has really taken off. He told me recently that he does, I think, 60% of his business overseas. So he's gone a lot of times. So we have a lot of subs for him, Kirk Lee and other people like that. He goes to China and Japan and Germany and wherever.
Let's talk a little bit more about the guitars and your selection of those guitars for particular types of music. Let's go back to that Jody Espina concert where you were in more of a listening room environment. Well, for instance, what guitars did you use at that?
I used a nylon string guitar for a couple of numbers on that. I used a Cordoba cutaway nylon guitar with a pickup. In a quiet environment like that, I can do that. I've tried the nylon a few times down at Rancho. It's been difficult, just the noise level, and just it's such a subtle sounding instrument that it has to have a quiet, intimate setting to be effective, and it was. I like doing that.
Tonight in the studio we have local jazz guitarist Bill Smith. And do you remember some of the tunes that you did that night?
Oh, wow. We opened with a Jobim tune called If You Never Come to Me. We actually did, I think, 2 or 3 of Mitch Hennis's tunes. He's quite a composer, our bass player.
Who does the arranging for that group?
All of us pitch in. We don't really rehearse very often. I mean, we kind of learn the songs on the gig. We'll try some new tunes, and then they'll just kind of take a course of their own, I guess. Yes, they just kind of evolve
as you're playing.
Yeah, as we're playing, one of us will steer it a different direction.
For those who are more familiar with playing music that's written down in front of them, how does that occur when you're doing improvisation like that?
The music in front of you is basically a guideline. Improv works like this. You've got the melody and the chords on a chart, and you take that, you'll play through that one time, you play the melody and the chords, and then you'll take solos on the chords that you have. And sometimes people will just kind of embellish the melody, or they'll just really stray from the melody and just improvise using that chord progression that you have for the melody, go in whatever direction you want to go. Usually each of us will take 1 or 2 choruses through of the song and then go from person to person, and whoever wants to take a solo does it. And then we come back to what we call the head. That's the melody. Play through the head again. That's pretty much standard jazz approach to a tune. Head, improvisation, back to the head. Just like a well-written theme.
And that's often referred to as straight-ahead jazz.
Yeah.
Now, let's contrast that with something that you did with the Uncommon Collective, which was just a couple weeks later.
Those tunes were more arranged, and we did have some solos in it, as you heard. I played a couple of solos on some tunes, and so did Corey, the mandolin player, Corey Chambers. But mostly those are pretty much arranged, and there were, I think, just about everything we played were vocal numbers, except for a couple of things that Kristen did, I think. So they're thought through more as far as arrangements go.
And so they're pretty much scripted. They're right. The music's right in front of you.
Yep. We had sheet music. We followed the chart. I maybe had like an 8 or 16 bar solo that I would breeze through, and then we're back to the form of the song. Now
the solo, do you get to do some improvisation with that, or that's just written out?
I can go where I want to. Just stay in the same key, pretty much.
Do you remember which song that you soloed?
The first song, the Three Dog Night classic. If you never go to Spain, I think that's the name of it. Never been to Spain.
Well, can you feel it? It must be real.
but they sure know how to use it. Oh, they don't abuse it, never gonna lose it. I can't refuse it.
You're listening to WRUU-LP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul. If your business enjoys the programming on WRUU-LP, please support the station with a donation. Let your customers, neighbors, and friends know that you share our vision of building a thriving economy based on a diverse and vibrant community. Our listeners will know you support Savannah's only broad-based community radio station. Become a tower sponsor or underwriter. To check out the levels of corporate sponsorship and to donate, go to www.wruu.org/corporate. Again, to check out the levels of corporate sponsorship and to donate, go to www.wruu.org/corporate. Thank you for listening to and supporting WRUU-LP. You're listening to music local and sustainable, and I'm your host, Dave Lake. Tonight, we are with local jazz guitarist Bill Smith here in the studio. Of all those different forms of music, is there things you prefer?
I love it all, but right now, probably my favorite is doing the Thursday night gig at the Firefly. We're actually off for a little while. We're starting back in February, but just playing that wide variety of vocal stuff we do. I mean, we play completely unplugged, no amplification at all. We have 2 guitars and 3 voices, and we do a lot of harmony work. Ellen Gross knows a lot of jazz standards, and we do some of those. Dave Smith is a tremendous vocalist, and he sings a lot of lead on Beatles numbers, and he does a great James Taylor cover, and that's been a lot of fun. That's my newest regular gig, I guess. We've been there about a year. That's a great joy. When we start back in February, y'all come out and see us. Give a plug there.
And that's on Thursday nights.
Thursday night, 6:30 to 8:30. Mm-hmm. And the food is great. The music's fun. It's always a blast.
Why don't we talk a little bit about your musical journey? How did you get to this point as a musician?
Wow. Where did this start? I guess I would consider my first music teacher my father, although he wasn't a music teacher. But he had a library of every kind of record there was. When I was growing up, I mean, very small, I was hearing opera, I was hearing bluegrass, pop music of the 50s, whatever that was back then. He had it. Just every type of music was being played at my house. That just gave me an ear and a passion for it. And then, lo and behold, I arrived to 5th grade one day, and they said, "You can join the band." I said, "Oh, I think that's for me." So I took up the trombone in 5th grade. I actually played trombone all the way through high school, and I actually majored on trombone my first couple of years in college. But trombone is something I kind of left behind some years back.
And why did you pick the trombone of all instruments?
Well, the band director said, "Why don't you try the trombone?" I didn't argue with him, so I said, "So okay, that looks like fun. It's shiny, it's pretty, it's got this thing that you pull in and out." And so we had fun with that.
You were young and impressionable at that point.
Exactly. And 2 years later, in 7th grade, I bought a guitar from my neighbor for $12. It was an old red guitar, and the strings were a half an inch off the neck, or it seemed like it was, and I took up the guitar. I went to my first guitar lesson. I'm left-handed. I had the guitar in my lap, turned like a left-handed person would play it, and the teacher said, "Turn it the other way." So I did. So I've been playing right-handed ever since, and been playing guitar ever since. I had a friend named Jimmy Sistar. We were good buddies. He passed away a couple of years ago. Very close friend of mine. And he said, "I play organ. Why don't we put together a band?" So we did that. And by the 8th grade, we had a 5-piece group that stayed together all the way through high school, played constantly for everything. Even some of us stayed together after that through college. My brother and a couple of other guys, and been doing it ever since.
The guitar that you bought for $12, was that a solid body guitar? A classic rock guitar?
Oh, it was a cheap box guitar, acoustic guitar. Just something to learn on. And my father bought us, my brother and I, 2 Hagstrom guitars, electric guitars, made in Sweden, I think, and an amplifier. And a little later, I got my first Gibson. It was an SG, I think like 10th grade, and had a lot of guitarists since.
Your brother also plays music.
Yeah, he's a very fine drummer. He lives down in Waycross, Georgia. We've been playing together since I was in 7th grade. He was a couple of years younger than me, and we've been playing together since then.
And it's with him you play in the rock band.
Yeah, it's called Rhythm Oil. We're based out of Waycross, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
But it's such a fun band to play with.
You were still in high school. You were playing in trombone, but you were also playing the guitar with rock bands.
Yeah, and I took up the piano in, I think, late 9th grade or early 10th grade. I can't remember. Got into that pretty heavily for a while. In fact, I think it was either my 2nd or 3rd year in college, I switched my major to piano. I was a piano major for several years there. And I had a really fine teacher, a fellow named John Huxford, one of my idols in my life. He passed away 8 or 9 years ago. He was also my composition teacher. I did a lot of writing in college. And in fact, for my senior recital, I did some of the usual classical pieces on piano, but I also did about 1/3 of the recital was my original tunes. And I've still got a recording of that somewhere. I'll have to bring it by and let you hear it sometime. Played with bands all through that. I would go to college for a while, then I'd split and play, and then I'd come back to college and split and play. And I was on the 10-year plan at Valdosta State University. Finally settled down, got married, had some children, got a job teaching music. I taught elementary school music in Valdosta, Georgia for 25 years, and still played in bands on the weekends that whole time. Well, my wife came to me one day and says, "Can you retire a little early so we can go to Savannah and start this business over there, a healthcare business?" I said, "Yeah, twist my arm." Yeah, make me do that. I was very eager to retire from teaching school. It was a great run, but it was time to do something else. So I've been in Savannah for 11 years. I have private students. I teach a lot of guitar students, a couple of piano students, and a bass guitar student. Have these gigs. I'm very happily retired, but still very busy playing, which is great.
Well, let's go back to your college years where you were alternating between playing music and going to college and playing music. Were you traveling with bands? Is that why you couldn't?
Not a lot of traveling, just there were clubs in Valdosta that I would play that would hire bands for 6 nights a week. We would play from Monday through Saturday nights, and it was grueling, but we were eking out a living, I guess you would say. I would do a little bit of traveling, but not like some of the friends I had that would just be traveling all over the country. But we pretty much worked out of Valdosta. We did a lot of original material. These were bands that wrote. Everybody in the band wrote, and as like anybody else, we were all trying to get the record deal, which never really happened. But I thought we had some good material at one point.
And then, so then you'd be in college, and interesting enough, I mean, here in Savannah, we think of you as a guitar player. You do play mandolin with the Celtic band.
Yes.
But this is a whole new discovery that you majored in piano.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? It's something I don't do very often. I do play keyboard with my rock band. I play probably more keys than guitar. We have another guy that plays lead guitar with the band too. That's the only thing keeping my keyboard chops up right now is playing with that band. At least I still have my foot in the door with that, but not like I did back in college. I was playing piano anywhere from 2 to 4 hours a day, practicing and learning material and writing.
And the trombone, however, has faded into the distance past.
Faded. My son, however, is a very good trombone player.
Well, would you like to play something?
Absolutely. Here's an old Christmas classic, Christmas Time Is Here by Vince Guaraldi.
Which guitar is this?
This is a Martin acoustic guitar.
How many guitars do you have?
10. Oh, I have friends that have 25 and 30, so I don't feel like I'm overindulging. I've got another 10 or 20 to go.
Are they mostly acoustic guitars?
Mostly electric guitars. I think I have 5 electrics, and the rest are either nylon string or acoustic guitars.
And why? Why such a variety of different guitars?
Some people collect cars. Some people collect guitars. And they all have their special purpose and place. I could probably get by with 3 guitars: a good nylon string, a good acoustic guitar, and a good electric guitar. But you want variety, though. Different, like I said earlier in the interview, different electrics for different gigs. Different acoustics for different acoustic gigs.
Now, because of the design of the acoustic guitar and the various woods and the various other components that go into it, I think the listeners can easily see how acoustic guitars could widely vary in terms of their tone quality and in terms of how you might want to use them differently for different circumstances. And for instance, why did you bring the Martin in?
Well, the main reason is I didn't want to lug an amp down here.
for an electric guitar.
I walked down here from my house, which is about a block away, so I just brought the acoustic.
And why this acoustic?
It's a good play when it has a great tone, and it's easy to play. Martins are known for that. They're just a great company.
Electric guitars also have all unique sound to them?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think I've ever played 2 that sounded alike.
Many people probably can think of things that would affect the sound of a acoustic guitar, but what are the features that really affect the sound of an electric guitar?
The strings you use, the wood it's made of, what amplifier you play it through, what effects you might use on that guitar amp, whether you use effects or not. All of those have something to play with it.
And that actually comes from the guitar itself and not added electronics.
No, I'm talking about added electronics too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like effects.
Okay.
That are foot pedals, that kind of thing.
And different guitars react differently to those effects.
Yeah, they all sound different through these effects.
Interesting.
If you use just a straight amp and a guitar, you're going to get a real clear picture of what the guitar actually sounds like. And of course, if you want to add other things to it, that's your prerogative.
And when you're thinking of buying a guitar, is it something you've heard and say, gee, I'd like to try that out?
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't buy anything that I haven't heard or at least tried to play. My most recent purchase was an ES335, which is a Gibson guitar. And I had one about 20-something years ago, but I sold it to a friend of mine who is now the lead guitar player for the Little River Band, a fellow named Rich Herring. And I regret it to this day. So I got another one recently. In fact, I called a pal that lives up in Nashville, Pat Buchanan, and he went shopping for me. He went around to different stores and played them, made a video of himself playing it and sent it to me, and I listened to it and says, that sounds like the one for me. So I ordered it.
And so he was at a guitar store
Yep.
in Nashville.
Absolutely.
Played a guitar, videoed him playing the guitar, sent that to you, and then
And I
at that
said,
point,
does this thing play well? And he says, yes, absolutely. And I trust him explicitly. He plays with everybody, Trisha Yearwood and Vince Gill and everybody up there.
and so you ordered then that specific guitar from that guitar
Exactly.
store.
That guitar
So the same brand guitar.
that I had before, back 20 years ago.
So you were familiar with it then. Does the feelings of that original guitar come back with the new one?
Absolutely. It's got a similar sound, and it feels great. In fact, I think this was actually better than the one I had.
And so the two guitars by the same manufacturer, the same model, can be totally different.
Big difference in years. The original was a 69. This was the new one is a 2003. They're very similar, though. Very, very close.
Okay, so they are somewhat similar. I mean, one thinks of an automobile, two automobiles made by the same manufacturer, the same model, can vary a little bit, but you don't think of them as being that variable. Is that pretty much guitars the same way?
If it's the same model, yeah, they're going to be close to a point. I mean, Fender Stratocaster guitar, there's so many different versions of that guitar. I would say that's a wider variety of those.
Also in college, is that when you started to write, or did you write before you even went to college?
College, yeah. I started writing tunes and didn't really write in high school. No. Just played cover music like everybody else. Wrote rock tunes and things for solo piano. I did write one piece for a flute solo. I was the piano accompanist for a buddy of mine, a guy named Glenn Cowart. And that was part of my recital. We did that on my recital. I dug that tune back up last year at the UU Church. I got enough chops back on my piano playing to accompany Kelly Blackmar. She played the flute on my piece that I wrote back in college, and we had a composer symposium at the UU Church last year. I did a couple of my pieces, including the piano, which is, I had to really work to get my chops back for that.
Talk a little bit more about that Composers Symposium.
We've done it 2 or 3 times. It wasn't on the list of things for the UU Church this year, but maybe next year, I don't know. It was people at the church that wrote Kelly's tunes that she wrote. Paul Johnson, Mayor Otis Johnson's brother, he's a member of our church, and he's quite a writer. And there's a woman named Pat Redden And she is a person that you should interview. She is an amazing composer. In fact, the choir at our church quite regularly does some of her vocal pieces that she's written.
Is she a member of the UU then?
She is a member, yes. Pat Redden, Redden. She has a whole catalog of original tunes.
That's very interesting that these were all members of the UU.
Yeah, there are some writers at that church.
That's interesting.
I'm sure I've left somebody out, but I'm racking my brain. I can't remember right now.
So you haven't composed recently for the guitar?
I wrote a couple of guitar solos a couple of years ago. In fact, I could play one for you a little bit if you
Okay,
like.
sure.
That's probably 3 or 4 years ago I wrote those 2 originals, but I haven't written anything since.
Was that part of your college degree to write music?
No, it was not part of my degree. I just took composition. It was a class offered by John Huxford, and I just loved it. I just loved being able to sit in, and he would take my pieces and say, "Why don't you try this?" Or he would steer me in the right direction, and I would say that makes a lot more sense than doing what I had written. It's almost like we kind of co-wrote some of my things, but they were my ideas, but he tweaked them for me. That was his job.
Oh, how about another number? You mentioned an original.
This is a tune I wrote some years back. It's called Small Creatures.
Tonight in the studio, we have local jazz guitarist Bill Smith. Another song, maybe?
Sure. Yeah, this is a song I actually learned out of a method book. It's called Solo in B Flat. It's by William Levitt. He was a professor at Berkeley College up in Boston, Massachusetts. Berkeley College of Music. Solo in B Flat. hard to play on acoustic.
You generally would play that on electric?
Yeah, I'm not used to playing that one on acoustic, but that tells me I need to practice on this more, I guess.
Now, do you get a chance to play solo?
Yeah, I played at the Pink House Tuesday night for the Economic Development Authority. I do a lot of solo stuff. I took my iPad and turned it to a fake book that I had loaded in there and just read tune after tune after tune, and threw in a few Christmas tunes here and there. That's always fun.
Did I hear it right? Fake books?
Oh, a fake book is the term they gave it back in the 40s and 50s when they had these, I guess they were kind of illegal at this time, these charts of tunes, and they had them in books. And it would be basically just the melody and the chords. And they said, you can fake it with this. And that's where the term fake comes from. And now, as kind of a play on words, they call the fake books real books. And I guess that's because they're legal now. So there's Real Book 1, 2, and 3 with hundreds and hundreds of the standards in them.
So those are the music standards. Mm-hmm. And there's basically chord charts of the music standards?
Yes, and the melodies.
And the melodies.
Yes. And there's so many of them now. There's just dozens of these fake books out there, or chord chart books, another term for them. Some are better than others, and you kind of have to fish around. And I guess a more experienced player would be more adept at that, being able to see it, look at a chart and say, wait a minute, these chord charts aren't right. And a lot of times I'll be working with a student and they'll want to learn a pop tune. I'll say, okay, well, do you have music to it? And say, no, but we'll go on my computer and see what we find. And a lot of times they're so inaccurate. You get these chord charts written by very limited guitar players, and they'll just write down something over the words, and so you have to search for the right thing.
And so the experienced player would simply be able to look at it and say, no, this is not right.
Yeah.
Where a
lot of times I'm able to do that. Sometimes I have to dig a little deeper, but most of the time I'll say, wait, I just heard the recording of this, and those chords are not even close. And I'll tell the kids that and say, let's dig a little deeper, or let me figure it out for you, and then I'll show it to you.
And that's almost a music theory lesson.
Exactly, yeah.
So let's talk more about your son.
Austin Smith, my 34-year-old son, lives here in Savannah. His collaborator is Julie Wild. They write and arrange music together. Austin has been writing original music since high school. He was in marching band, and he played a little guitar and bass guitar, and he knows horn instruments very well and all the ranges and everything, and knows how they work. And so he started arranging in high school, and then that developed into a lot of composing through college. He wrote music for films, and he got a master's degree in composition up at North Carolina School of the Arts. Studied with David McHughes, great composer. He wrote for a lot of films. We've seen Moscow on the Hudson, things like that. And Austin learned a lot there and continued with that after college, after getting his master's degree, and met Julie some years back, and they've been writing together and arranging together for some time now. And they actually went to Paris a few summers ago and did an album with an 18-piece jazz band, and it's a really, really fine album. Right now he's doing some other projects. I can't tell you exactly what, but he's still writing. And that's another interview for you right there, Dave, is my son Austin. He would be a good interview.
Mm-hmm. And so he also is a professional musician.
He is. He does other things too, but that's part of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And if I'm not mistaken, he did some of the charts. I think the Velvet Caravan some of
Yes,
their
the concert they
performances
did with the
for-
symphony.
with
He
the
did some
symphony.
of those charts. Exactly.
Right. Okay.
I'd forgotten about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So he does still work with local groups as well as doing things more nationally.
He has written charts for marching bands, their halftime shows, concert bands, jazz bands. Just he's pretty much run the gamut of it.
And on the other hand, your daughter is a music fan. Into music as in listening?
Was. She was in high school marching band. She was the drum major for the marching band in Valdosta, and continued through college. She had a scholarship playing clarinet at Mercer University in Macon. I mean, she was a communications major, but she played all the way through college. I don't think she's picked up her clarinet since. But she is definitely a music lover.
Yeah, a music fan.
Jamie's, if you want anything promoted in Savannah, Georgia, contact my daughter, Jamie Smith. She'll help you.
And so she's actually into communications.
Yeah. She actually works with my wife's business, it's a healthcare business, but she does, unofficially, she does a lot of communications. She helps people with events.
Tonight we've had local jazz guitarist Bill Smith in the studio. And I want to thank you so very much for coming in.
My pleasure. I had a blast. Thanks for having me.
This has been another edition of Music Local and Sustainable, and I've been your host, Dave Lake. Save this time for another show next week.
Well, I know we ain't headed for the Hall of Fame. Gonna give it what we got, man, it ain't no shame. Let me know if you can hear me. Check, check, 1, 2. Let me know if you can hear me. Check, check, 1, 2.